why don't we start our own company? How hard could it be, you know? I don't know what the hell I was doing. I also left full-time employment that April, 4 weeks before Archie was born. We're a proper company. We want to grow. Right? We're going to get an office. It was only like a 6-7 person office.
What? But there was just the two of you?
Yeah. First ever commercially signed that night. Biggest contract was basically pulled from us. I just had a new baby arrive. This had to work. The government came in with a price cap, basically crippled our #1 market. We had hundreds of thousands of pounds outstanding on invoices. I had a call with our accountant basically saying my risk tolerance level is at its maximum and I can't risk any more than we're risking. I was the last Lone Ranger in that office packing away going, I don't know what happens next. Everyone was now hybrid. And we grew like 100% that year in terms of revenue. Step back and go, we delivered this.
Of all the kind of the things that you've told us about so far, I'm interested in going deep on all of them, but the one that sparked my curiosity was you met Alex in a hot tub. Is that right?
No, we knew each other before the hot tub.
Darren, thanks for coming in.
Hello, good to see you.
Yeah, excited to have you here. Initially, it would just be cool just to understand, just give us the elevator pitch of what your business is, what does it do, who does it help? Just tell us a little bit about it.
Okay, yeah. So I'm the co-founder and CEO of ClearSky Logic. So we basically save businesses from disaster with our technology. How many projects you see that deliver late or absolutely fail, and how much does that affect businesses and their innovation, their scale? So we partner with companies to get their software right, help them grow faster, help them serve more customers, all that sort of stuff.
And just as well, just a bit of context of size. When did you start? A little bit of that as well.
So we just turned 5. Right. We didn't realize until I had this like sneaking suspicion. I was like, wait a minute, it's January. And then I went to a business partner. I was like, oh, I think we turned 5 today. And he's like, no, it was last week. And I was like, oh yeah. Happy birthday. So yeah, we've been through it all. So we've been here around 5 years. Started with just 2 of us. I'm kind of going into that story. We're about 30 people now.
Wow.
And yeah, we're growing pretty quickly. Through kind of ups and downs, through pandemics, through markets getting destroyed that we're working in, all that sort of thing.
Wow. Well, and to be fair, that's exactly what we're wanting to hear, is the story of what that journey's been like. So do you want to just tell us about the early days? Because that's rapid growth in 5 years to go from effectively 2 to 30 odd people.
Yeah.
What was it like in the early days?
So before ClearSky, I was a software developer.
Right.
So I'm like the introverted software developer that hacks away at code all day to build solutions for a company at the time. And then the reason I like doing that is because you can solve problems for people. Like, you'd have Janet in finance had a problem with a spreadsheet. You're like, right, I'll solve this for you. And all of a sudden you've saved Janet like 3 hours a week. And you're like, wow, it's like amazing, right? And then you get better at it and you build more software and you can solve whole teams' problems or solve problems of like a larger scale. So we got to a point where the business that we were in at the time, Phil and I were business partners. So we were both in the same company. He was my boss at one point. He hired me into that company. We'd done like tremendous things over a number of years, built energy billing platforms in-house with like 5 people that actually worked like real time, which in the industry was really unheard of. So we took that energy company's team from about like 5 people to about 30 as well. And we got to a point where we're like, well, we've solved like loads of problems for this business. Wouldn't it be great to solve other businesses' problems in other sectors? And, it's all that problem solving is the thing behind it. So why don't we start our own company? How hard could it be,
And foreshadowing.
I don't know what the hell I was doing. Right. So we kind of made this, so I was going to leave that company at the time. I had a big offer from a big financial company in Edinburgh to go and basically take a massively high-paying job and, be comfortable. And I was like, that sounds okay, but maybe there's another path. So I knew the passion was solving problems, moving quickly. I don't like that analysis paralysis thing that you see a lot. Like that just frustrates me massively when I'm more like, let's just try something that doesn't work. Let's try something else. And so that would help me later on in the business. But at the time I was like, well, if I go and work for a big bank, maybe that's not what I'm going to be able to do. My business partner, Phil, he's like a super senior tech guy. He knows his stuff inside out. I was like, if I'm going to start a business with someone I trust, someone I think is really credible, someone that's really strong where I'm weak. So I remember walking around Prince Street Gardens with Phil one lunchtime, basically going, I've got this idea. How are you feeling about things? Maybe we could just do this on our own. And it only took a few conversations. We're like, yeah, let's just do it.
Really?
Yeah. And so looking back, so that was like the January. And we kind of decided to do it, and we kind of went out there to try and like basically win our first contract. And you just go to your contacts and be like, look, we're going to start our own thing up. Can we help you in your business with your software? And we got a contract kind of landed, which all sounds great. Right? That's great. Like you had like 12 grand a month of contract signed for like 6 months. Brilliant. Right? You couldn't ask for a better start. And it's probably worth saying and not jump around, but in parallel, my second son Archie was to be born that April. So I also left full-time employment that April, 4 weeks before Archie was born.
Wow.
I don't quite know why I did that.
Yeah. And
my wife has been massively understanding, and we're still married now, so that's like a really good point of this whole thing. So yeah, that's how it all started.
So this is back in January
2018.
Okay,
yeah.
Got it. So a couple of conversations.
Yeah.
With Phil.
Yeah.
Then you have a new kid a couple of months later.
Yeah, and it was before Archie came along that I resigned and had to get going. And yeah, so our first client was down in Sheffield, through a contact, and that was fantastic. A great client, and gave us lots of patience and lots of steering around what they would expect, from a software company in our role, which is brilliant. And it's really the people that help you at that stage that you don't know really what you're doing. You know your tech side of it, but how do you come up with a contract with a client, right? You'll Google a bit, and then you'll kind of be like, oh, I think this is it. And then the client will kind of look at it and go, well, you need to improve this bit or that bit. So like just tons of support getting off the ground. We basically got started. Things were going fairly well. We're about maybe like 8 weeks in. We maybe landed another client, like a much smaller client, but there's still only Phil and I. So we were having to do not just business, but like the actual tech side of it and delivering. So that was pretty tough, just kind of spinning plates, but you got to do that. And then we're like, you know what? We're a proper company. We want to grow, right? We're going to get an office. That was the idea. Right? It's probably me being wacky, like, we'll just get an office. I've looked at offices. We could probably afford an office. We've got like 14, 15 grand coming out. Of course, we could afford an office. So we went and looked around and then signed for an office down on Albany Street in Edinburgh. It was only like a 6-7 person office.
But there was just the two of you at that point?
Yeah. Well, we had grand aspirations, I was already like, we'll hire this person, we'll get that person in. And obviously with growing technology over the years, we had a lot of contacts that were like, oh, we're interested, let's do something together. We knew they were good. So yeah, we signed the contract and hired probably our first developer to work with us. He was obviously developer number one. He was quite junior at the time, but he's a great guy and stayed with us for years. But on the day we signed the lease, we were at an event over at the on Haymarket. It was like one of these big events where, okay, we'll go and we'll network and we'll meet people and that'll be great. And we got a call from the CTO of the company that was our first client, the main contract we had at the time, basically saying that it's not good news. I'm like, not good news? Okay, what's going on? He's like, so the company's going to have to fold. And we're like, what does that mean? And yeah, so imagine you signed the lease. The first ever commercial lease was signed that night. Biggest contract was basically pulled from us. Yeah.
So this maybe leads us into the question I was wanting to ask. Obviously, your business is called ClearSky Logic.
Yes.
But I'm interested in what was the emotion like in that first year then? And that's maybe I bet there was a bag of emotions at that point.
Oh, yeah.
What was the emotional journey over that, maybe using that trigger, but tell me about emotions.
Yeah, so I think extreme naivety helps in that stage. Like, we can solve anything. We knew the tech side of it. We knew we could help companies. But that was a bit we were sure of. So have like your core. That was our focus. The sales, marketing, all that stuff was new to us. But I think if we knew how hard some of those were, we would maybe have been a bit more cautious at the time. My personal circumstances at that time, I just had a new baby arrive. This had to work. There was no way that didn't work. Like, so that extreme focus that we had in the business to make it work.
How much pressure did you feel to make it work then?
Oh, like tremendous pressure, yeah. I still feel it today. I mean, in some ways it's a bit like gambling. We're just playing with higher stakes now.
Yeah.
We've got 30 people in the business. There's a massive payroll. We're still quite immature in some of the functions of the business that we've only brought on in the kind of recent times. So yeah, there's still kind of high stakes even now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I remember for me, there was quite a tick between being like, when my business was smaller, it was like, okay, if anything went wrong, I could not pay myself and I could pay all the team out of the savings I've got. And then there's like that tipping point where you're like, oh, I can't pay everyone out of my personal. Do you know what I mean? I always had like that security.
Yeah.
And then it gets to a point where you're like, oh, I actually, like, I have to make this work now. Like, I just don't have my personal ability. I guess it's like that step from almost running a lifestyle business into like actually kind of growing, a startup. What from your wife's perspective, what, that conversation where you're like, right, so we're going to leave, like me and Phil, we got this thing. Like, do you remember like that conversation?
Yeah, I do. We're sitting on Tony Macaroni's. And I think it's the same reason why I think that why I'm able to kind of sell to new companies and build new relationships now. It's that passion, right? I really want to help companies get tech right. If they get tech right, they grow faster and we become like a long-term partner with them. And like, that's the bit that I always had. So even when I was sitting there in Tony Macaroni's car, I was like, I can do this. I can help people. I can help companies. This'll just work. And she believed in me at the time. I've always been a bit like that, like maybe punching above my weight in a lot of ways, all tour. It's been tough times, it sounds like it's great. Oh, you've started a company from nothing. No one in my family's ever had business or money or wealth or anything like that. But probably Carla sees a lot of the other side of it where it's like, you're not sleeping very well. Right. You've asked us to stop spending money. That sort of thing. I'm like, yes. So you do get sight that, times like that. And I think it's unavoidable. I don't think you'd ever get plain sailing. Even when you hear about companies that go out for massive raises, I've never done that. And that's going to be a new thing for me this year. When you just got a £2 million raise, that's not less pressure either, right? So even if it's not your own money at stake, it's still, even if it's other people's money at stake, it's your name on
it helps with cash flow, but that's maybe it.
Higher stakes again, right? It's like I've got to now make 200 grand, payroll per month.
So passion, belief, kind of determination, obviously in that first year. How's that has it changed any kind of over? We're 5 years in now. How's the journey gone from an emotion point of view? From an emotion point of view,
so it does still goes up. It's still up and downs. Like you always think, this year we'll get to a point in business where it'll just be stable, and we can maybe take it a bit easier at times. It just never happens. I think your ambitions increase with the size of the business and what you think you can do. So that's kind of always there. And there's always in business that you hear lots of people say it that your business is like chewing glass and staring at the sunset at the horizon. It can be like that a lot.
I've never heard that phrase before. No, that's a good one.
I mean, even so you're focused on look at all the potential, look what we could be doing, but right now it's super painful. And you get that at business. Even this year we had a client which called us a week before Christmas, saying we've got to put everything on hold. And they were a really big client that we just landed in November, and we're going, what do we mean hold? We've got a big team of people working on this sort of stuff. So you never know when you're going to be blindsided by potential catastrophe. But you just roll with it, and just grind it out. Like you've got to make a win. You can't just sit there and hope it'll fix itself.
And what does the communication back into the business look like then when you get that kind of call from a client? Right.
I've tried various things over the course of ClearSky, from being absolutely transparent to actually only some people need to know about some of this stuff, and it's maybe a distraction for other types of people. So I think over the last maybe year, I've grown a bit of a kind of senior team around me and around Phil to help us with these things as well. So we've got a really good head of client services. We've got a really good PM function that's part of the business now. So there's a lot of that's shared now at senior level, when it just happens. We'll be on Slack, this has happened. Here are the top 6 issues we need to work on as a senior group to resolve. So it's no longer just Phil and I with a list of things we need to do. So it's good like that. It's taken a while to get that.
And is that only this year then that you've got that senior team built around you? Or I
have tried previously, and I think that's one of the bits I had to get better at in business. Having a senior team was tough for me to get right. So technology, software, all that sort of stuff. Hired, built teams all my career. I know how to do that. Do I know how to hire client services people, salespeople, project managers? It's not my specialism, right? And that bit I really struggled at for a while and got it wrong quite a lot as well. Just not really be naive, not knowing what I was hiring for, not knowing how to manage people as well. Bringing in good people, and then you're like, well, this is maybe not turning out to be what I thought it would be. And it's never all their fault. It's probably a lot of my fault. So just going that journey and trying to work out how to have a senior team and how to interact with them has been a challenge.
Is there a particular moment in that journey, a particular one that stands out where where there was a realization for you being like, oh, that was all me?
Yeah, probably probably like last year we got a really senior person in the company, and there was a point where I've got this like agreeable side of me where I'm like, oh, we'll get on, you know. I'll give the person kind of maximum autonomy, just do whatever you think's best, you know. And then but I don't think that's great in senior management. It's like, you know, you need regular feedback, keeping each other on the right kind of path. So I'd left it for like way too long, and then we had a bit of an issue. And I was like, oh, wait a minute, you're not the problem, I'm the problem. What am I doing? So that realization was really important and critical to get right at that time.
It's pretty self-aware as well, though, to kind of almost hold the mirror up and say, actually, it's me that's the problem.
Yeah, it's like a Taylor Swift song, isn't it? Just lots of reflecting and then kind of working on that and knowing it's an issue and be like, right, okay, well, how do we do this in a different way? Because we're all in it to win it, right? So last year we started a share scheme at ClearSky as well. So we started to give ownership to senior people in the business, which is only right. Like, we're still growing really quickly, and we've all got to be aligned on that as well.
And obviously with that 5-year period, we've had a major world event in the middle of that, I guess. How did COVID affect you?
Oh, COVID, right? I think everyone's got a similar sort of story around this. But I can give it from my point of view. It was March, I think it was 2020. And we're hearing something about a Chinese flu thing, you know, and we're like, oh, this is, you know, it's never going to get here. It's fine. And then I think there was a big Nike conference in Edinburgh, right? So we were potentially one of the first places to get a big dose of that COVID at the time. Initially, it was Phil and I had a call. Like, what do we do? Do we just pause? Yeah. I mean, at the time we didn't have as many staff as we do now. We had maybe like 12, 15 staff. Like, do we just pause? What does it mean for us? And I think the thing we did at that point, which was really important, was like hold our nerve. You know, like, we had contracts, we had work we had to get going regardless of what was going on elsewhere, keep the team focused on it, and then try to play forward. So we did that. At the time we didn't know, but looking back, it was even more a push towards digital transformation, towards digital solutions, right? Because everyone was now hybrid. They couldn't rely on passing bits of paper between each other in an office anymore. So looking back, it was really good for ClearSky. We grew like 100% that year in terms of revenues, which, you know, who would have thought it? But there was really tough times in that. So that first period of COVID where no one knew what was going on, they were like, oh, is the army being called in? You know,
that's right.
Is this like World War Z, or like what's going to happen here? So I remember we had a lease coming up in that first office I talked about earlier. And obviously, because it was lockdown, proper lockdown, that office was still full of our stuff, like desks, monitors, like you name it, it was in that office. And I was the only one that was close enough to that office to do anything about it. So I remember our office was coming up. So the lease was coming up at the end of the week, and it was like a random Tuesday night. So I was like, right, it was in the summer, and I was like, okay, I'll empty the car, and I'll just drive through Edinburgh. I'll go into the office, and I'll just try and take as much as I can out of the office. So get driving through Edinburgh. There's not a car on the road. If there was tumbleweed, it would have been everywhere. I've never seen anything like it because I'd not been around. Remember, there was that point where the only people around in the centre of Edinburgh were people who were cycling or that sort of thing. So it was very strange. And so I parked up right out on Albany Street outside the office, and I was like, did I just leave the car running? Is this like this is there's no
grab and go.
Yeah. And it's like, ambulances and police cars like flying up and down the streets. I was like, am I going to get in trouble for even being here? Yeah. Are they going to accept that my lease is coming up as a valid excuse to be in Edinburgh? And at that point we didn't know what it meant for the business either. We hadn't got to the point where we realized it was going to be okay. So there was me, co-founder. This was 2 years in, so it wasn't just a brand new business. Going into the office with like Allen keys, all that stuff, shoving things in the car, keeping an eye out. Are traffic wardens still going around in pandemics? I think I was listening to a business podcast at the time just to try and keep my mind like off what was actually happening. But there was one point where I was just about to close the door when I packed as much as I could in that car. I turned around and go, what's going to happen next? Because that was our first office. That was the thing, that was going to be our home, and we'd grow there. And I was the last, the Lone Ranger in that office packing it away going, I don't know what happens next.
So you've got computers and laptops and desk, monitors in your car, and what were you going to do with them? Did you know?
They lived in my garage for quite a while.
Still there, probably.
Yeah. At that point, it might have been a case of I might need to sell this stuff at some point, right? So because no one knew what was going to go on, and that was quite a sobering moment when you were, it was like I Am Legend. It was like a movie. And it was like, one day, if I write a book, this is going to be a part of it.
Yeah. Was it, so for you, obviously you're in digital transformation. So like from the hybrid thing for you, like how easily were you already in the process of being like, actually, well, we use a lot of tech as it is. Was that transition from kind of, I guess, office-based into hybrid or fully remote?
Yeah.
An easy one for you because of the industry? Was it just like start writing code and building the system quickly for yourselves? Or
so you think that? It's been an absolute nightmare, to be honest, the hybrid thing. So I grew up always in offices. That wasn't right either. There was no work-life balance. You couldn't drop your kids off at school or pick them up, which isn't right. But with the pandemic, we went to full remote, which for us, we found really difficult. So at ClearSky scale, why companies come to us is because we provide the whole product delivery team. So we've got the developers, the designers, the testers, the PMs, the BAs. So we basically have the team that delivers the software, not like individuals. I think if you're a smaller company and there's only like 3 of you and you're just delivering your bit of work, I think it's fine, be remote. But for us, we have the teams that deliver the software. And why are our teams good? Because they work together really well, really efficient. They've got a top eye on quality. They've done it before together. But what falls apart when they're all remote, right? It's those 10-second conversations. Can you double check that for me? Have you seen this problem? And I think that's been really difficult to do remotely. So like we're back hybrid now. Like the guys in the office maybe 2 or 3 days a week. And that's kind of where we kind of have to be. I wouldn't go fully remote again. It was just communication as businesses grow is just so hard. And everyone's like, oh, you can jump on a video call anytime, but would you? Like if you're a junior developer, you've got a job at ClearSky Logic, you're building greenfield projects for the first time ever in your career. Are you going to annoy your senior developer, once an hour? Twice an hour? Because if you were sitting next to them, you'd be like, oh, what's this thing? And that would save you a whole day of like problems. So I think there's probably a lot of things we aren't seeing that if you're senior and you're working remotely, you probably can get away with it. But for people that are just coming up, you're not getting that kind of bonding, not getting that input, it must be like super tough, right? And that's what we've seen. Like if we bring juniors on, it has been more tough to try and do it remotely.
Yeah, interesting. So as well, I guess over, you see we had COVID and then there's been bounce back, but there's been a whole lot of things also happening in the world in terms of that. How has that affected, I guess, the general tech industry and what have you seen from that?
Right, okay. The next calamity. Right, okay. So when you start a business, you're relying heavily on your network, your referrals, your contacts that you worked with previously, right? 99% of them for us were in energy and utilities. Right. So, and we knew that industry inside out. We built energy billing platforms, super tough things to do. But if you think about energy's not like Amazon where a cup's £5 and you know how much it is. Energy's like what time of day, what tariff are you on? Did that tariff change halfway through a day? All that stuff. So we knew that world inside out and our contacts were there. And then the government came in with a price cap, which basically sent a lot of that a lot of the energy market went from like 60 different energy suppliers to, there's maybe less than 20 now of decent, of even any size. So basically crippled our number one market. And obviously if people don't have budgets for digital transformation, that's a problem for us. And a lot of our stuff in that area was to reduce cost to serve. So energy suppliers would throw people at problems. So they'd be like, you know what? We added 200 more people to our customer service team this year. You're like, what? Are you absolutely mad? Like, why are you hiring more people? What's the problem? Customers have issues with bills and, they've got issues with service. That's not more people problem. That's a systems and processes and digital engagement problem. So we did really well in energy utilities until that market basically collapsed. Most of the energy suppliers went out of business unless they were like an energy creator, unless they had that side of the business. So that was tough for us to pivot. It's one of those things in business is why are we still here? My first boss come out of uni. I had a meeting with, maybe a couple months ago. He's like, Darren, a few people started businesses at the same time as you. They're not around anymore. And I was like, we wouldn't, if we just done what we were planning to do, we wouldn't be around either. It's just, it's pivoting. So we looked at other industries that had the same problems as energy. How do you provide a really good digital engagement for customers that keep them happy, keep them informed, give them choice without having to call a call center? So we pivoted into financial services, and we're doing predominantly most of our work there now. And the flip side of that, so energy utilities, we work with a lot of energy software supplying companies. So people that build software for energy, we would work with them to help them build their software, right? So it's a good kudos to us because we just know the sector. And we had an absolutely great deal that came out towards the end of that energy market slowdown. And we're like, this is it. This is great. This fills our revenue and more. This is like double the revenue we'd have. And we've got a long trajectory of work to do for years. Isn't this great for business? And then the Russia thing happened. Which had a severe impact on the project we were going to do. You couldn't write it. So we went from, we're just about to sign a contract, CEO's giving us we're going to do this, you're our partner, let's do it, to, they're holding off signing this thing. And we're like, what do you mean holding off? I thought this was a done deal. Why are they holding off? Then 3 months later, Russia's rolling into Ukraine. We're like, oh, okay, I get it. So you couldn't write that, right?
Yeah.
So we've had the pandemic, market collapse, and global warfare.
Yeah, and for relatively in the tech industry, 20 folk, you're not huge, you're not massive, but it's interesting to see things like on the other side of the world affecting relatively small software companies in Edinburgh. Like it's kind of funny to be like, well, that's crazy that had an impact on you here.
Yeah, yeah. And at the time we were like, well, that'll be 50% of our revenue for this year.
Yeah. And
then it went from, it's going to be 0. Yeah. Right. Okay. And that, that partner we would have been working with are probably in trouble too. So then you're like, well, at that point we just thought we need to try and diversify our client portfolio. It can't all be energy and utilities and all that. Even though we know that sector well, we've got to get out there and shout about what we can do, and get some new case studies, some really good bits of PR.
Yeah. So it's interesting. So we're obviously doing a podcast. Was part of, I know you've done a kind of a series of talking about podcast, and you had a podcast. Was part of that strategy of launching that podcast to kind of speak to new people? What was your kind of thinking behind that? Was that part of it? Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So I'm an introverted developer on the inside, right? So technically I should be in a basement somewhere coding. But over the years I've forced myself to become, a new or better Darren, but I still struggle with, I guess, networking in large rooms, like or large groups of people, is the main thing. I'm not, where your kind of limitations are. And I find it like quite, it doesn't feel authentic if I'm just like going around and trying to network. It feels strange. But what I love doing is a bit like this, we've obviously met each other in a hot tub not long ago. But like we've never met, right? But it feels nice and natural and easy to talk to people, understand what they care about, what their problems are. Have I got any advice that I can give them that might help them? So that was the reason why I started the Tech Entrepreneur, which was, to get me out, to get talking to other business leaders I wouldn't have talked to previously. They would get value out of it as well. They would be talking about what was important to them. I'd learn more about their companies and get me away from behind a desk, not talk to people. Because it's easy to get like that in business. Like, I've got so much work to do, so many emails, so many things. It's like, that's not going to get you more business, right? You need to get out there. And that was the kind of driver behind it. And it's been really good for meeting people. And I think what's the next limitation of, if something's really hard and I'm doing it and it's good, it's trying to make the most of it, right? I think that's where I've kind of stopped, and I've been like, we've got it, it's in the bag, it's in the can, I put it out there, it's fine, it's done. It's like, but did we make the most out of it that we could have? Probably not. And I think that's where time pressures come in, and you're like, well, if I'm running the business, and doing sales, working on current client projects and all that, where does it fit in and how valuable is it? Luckily we've started expanding the team at ClearSky, where I've got more time, or I should do theoretically more time with the other stuff now. I've got a random question. Sorry,
well, I've got one as well.
Right. Well, you go first. Right, okay. So it's unrelated to what you're just talking about, but we've been speaking with a few people about that idea of they were technicians in the like the E-Myth. They were technicians in terms of they could do the work, right? And then they're trying to grow the business, and they start managing the people to do the work, and then you get to the point where you got a team and a board and whatever, and now you're like, how difficult was that transition from you like being on the tools writing code? Like, do you find yourself jumping back in? Like, how was that like pull for you?
So probably I'm not a very good developer. So it was quite good for me. So in my career, I'd moved from being a developer to being like a developer team lead. And at that point, it is more about the translation from what's a business problem to what the solution might look like. So I'm still doing that. I'm still just talking to businesses. What's the problem? Okay, I've seen another similar problem in a similar industry. Here's how they fixed it. Would that sort of thing work? And then I'd pass that over to the production team. So I find that okay for me. It's been fairly natural. But you could see where you start getting overwhelmed in areas you're not strong at. Like I mean, marketing's one for me. It's just not my thing.
So how do you kind of shore up against that deficiency then? What have you done?
So I'll give you a good example. So sales, right? I'm not like a sales guy, or at least like in my head, I'm thinking I'm not a sales guy. And I tried to hire for sales, right? I hired like 3 people over the course of like 3 years, and then a fourth one, again, it still didn't work out. I'm like, wait a minute, this is me. I'm the problem. I wasn't the problem. But what I did do, I did it myself for like a year. And I'm like, well, you know what? I'm not just going to hire someone else because it feels like I just rolling the dice, right? I'll do it for a year and I'll work out why people want to buy off ClearSky and how do we make that, how do we de-risk that decision for them? How do we jump from, here's a multi-1,000-pound contract to we'll just do a bit to get to know you. And so I basically built up a way of selling in that year that I know works well. It's good for clients. It means that we can work with new people faster. It de-risks it for them. And the big change behind that was we call it like a discovery workshop series. Yeah, it's not like it feels in some ways. I've went around the houses and reinvented the wheel. But for us, it's let's spend. If we've never met before, be like, you know what? Let's sign off a $300,000 contract. You like me? We'll get this done. You know that, right? You've talked to people and they've said we're good, but it's not good, right? It's not a good way to sell, especially if someone else comes into the business and they aren't the founder. So I built this kind of new process where we discovery workshop series. We basically work with prospective clients and we get them in our room with us for like 3 days. And first day is what are the business problems? Like get all their stakeholders in, they all can agree on the problem. They normally don't to begin with. And then they eventually do when we're talking. And our best of the team are there as well. Our leads are really talented people. First day we kind of hear about all the problems. Second day we come back of here's the ideas. So we went off to the industry. We've looked at your challenges and compared it against similar industries, similar problems. How's it been solved there? What didn't work elsewhere? Show them what the world could look like. And the third one is we go back with a plan and go, right, with these challenges, with the potential, here's phases, milestones, timelines, costs about what you could do. And you know what? That document, you could give it to your internal delivery teams. That's valuable on its own. Mm-hmm. It's taking them from uncertainty, daunting feeling about what's going on in business to, we've worked with people that are not in our business, but seem to understand it really well and understand ways out of the current situation. That's value on its own, and that changed it, for growing ClearSky really. And now that's a scalable process because it's not a big gap.
How long does that process take? I know it's 3 days. Is that 3 consecutive days, or are you talking about 3 days over a
So it's
month?
probably 3 days over a number of weeks, normally kind of 2 to 4 weeks. Really the reason for that is the going away after the meeting, distilling it, working out, right, okay, so this person said this was the problem. Did they have a metric to back it up? And then you have to go in with all your homework done, all your research done, because that's why you're there. You're there to provide what's the innovation that could help them, but have the substance behind that. That's not just a guess. So it's like, it's well-founded. And that's great because the clients will work with us. We know, trust, and like each other by the end of that process. Normally, there's never been an issue where we don't. And we're a credible partner to move forward with. Whereas flip that another way, we tried to sell back today, being like, I'll spend a couple of hours with you. Based on that couple of hours, I'll write up a proposal, what I think might work. Yeah. I don't have any validation behind it. I've not shown you what other competitors are doing. And then you might go for it. So you maybe do like 1 in 2 people are maybe going for it. Where with Discovery Workshop, once clients are in Discovery Workshop, 4 and 5, they'll sign with us, which is just revolutionary for the business, right?
I like the kind of phrase there. How do you de-risk the decision for the client? Mm-hmm. And spend time and help them kind of understand what their problem is and I like that. Yeah,
well, it took me 4 years to even start that journey. But that's why. So in that circumstance, it probably wasn't the people that I was hiring in to do sales were the problem. It was they would have came in with like no process, just like talk to people and get them sign up a proposal. And it's like, well, that's not going to work. It might work if you're the founder and you know everything inside out and you're totally authentic, credible, and everyone knows and likes you. It's not going to work for a salesperson. So that's kind of where it came from.
My random question was, of all the kind of the things that you've told us about so far, I'm interested in going deep on all of them, but the one that sparked my curiosity was, you met Alex in a hot tub. Is that right?
No, we knew each other before the hot tub.
So
that's how rumors start.
So maybe some quick fire questions for you now, Darren. Then.
Yeah, go for it.
So scariest moment in business. So in that 5-year period, there's a lot happened.
Yeah.
What's the scariest moment?
I had a large client, a typical agency. We'd built a great relationship with the client, and we were their best partner, and they were our best client, and they went into liquidation. We had hundreds of thousands of pounds outstanding on invoices. The administrators had been called in, and yeah, that was the toughest thing, because it wasn't just we had to go and find more sales. It's like the sales we thought we had, the money's not in the bank. So that was probably the toughest bit of the business, and my personal side of it as well. We basically knew there was a problem in December, but we didn't want to we had to let people go, but we didn't want to let them go in December. So there was a choice there. We go, I don't care. It's not ethical to do this right now. It's going to need to wait till January. Right. That was the toughest part, and bringing people in that we'd hired in that were good people that we had to let go. It was kind of a couple of years ago.
And just going through that experience, which, is something you wouldn't wish on your worst enemy, really. But what kind of lesson can you draw from that if it were to happen again?
At the time, it was really bad, but we've grown back stronger since then. In terms of how we control cash flow, how we understand risk, how we deal with risk and try to quantify it, so it's not just like a feeling thing. Mm-hmm. More forward planning. We started working with a company called Waypoint Partners in Edinburgh. They help agencies scale, and they basically came in and went, you are clearly passionate about what you do, but you're not charging enough. Why are you not charging enough? Is it because you're not confident about what you're doing, and you need to charge more, because if you do have a blip like that, you need to be able to get through it. And I'm like, yeah, all that makes total sense. Why didn't we just do that? So that's helped mature us massively. Mm-hmm. And also, I think back at that time, maybe I could have stuck to my guns more and been like, we won't let people go, we'll keep going. And believe in myself a bit more that I could go out there and do what needs to be done. But I think at the time, it was massive pressure. Personally, I didn't have a lot of money kind of on the sideline saved up or anything. So it was, I remember I had a call with our accountant basically saying, my risk tolerance level is at its maximum, and I can't risk any more than we're risking. So we did. The upside that it all worked out. We got paid everything we were due. We worked with the administrators of the company, got paid more. Wow. There was maybe a couple of bridges burned in that process about playing hardball, about not doing anything until an invoice was paid. That I look back on and think, could I have acted in a better way there? It was more understanding. At the same time, we were there for survival, right? At one point, we were like, is payroll going to happen? Like, it might, it probably will, but yeah. So there was a lot to that. But that was a super hard time. And I think one thing with business leaders is, if it's a hard time for you, all the people around you will be hard for them, and they won't know the details that you know. So they'll be like, oh, Darren's totally not like himself. Especially Carla, wife, she'll be like, what's going on? Yeah. And I'm like, well, do you want me to tell you? Right. If I start telling you, it'll be like 4 hours later, and you know.
So what is your strategy there? Do you just do you tell, or do you just keep it yourself?
No, I think I try and summarize and stuff like that. And I think over the years with Carla, she can probably tell me there's something wrong before I tell her. And she's really supportive. So when I do need her, she's there. And yeah, obviously you got times like that where you just need someone there to be like, there was one time during it all being like, you've done enough. You've done enough for the family. Like, personally, like however much money we've got, like, I don't live in a mansion or anything. Like, we've got a nice Barrett new build house, and the kids are looked after, and we've got, we've got a car and all that sort of stuff. It's really nice. She's like, you don't need to do any more than this. Like, this is it. And you could go and get a job earning exactly the same you're earning now. It's okay. Whereas in my head, I'm like,
it's really helpful, to have that kind of support.
I remember at that time, it was a bit like a cam, and be like, yeah, it's enough, right? It's more than I could have wanted when I started this thing. So, whereas in my head, I'm always like, what's the next thing? Yeah. Like, even with ClearSky, I've got ClearSky, but I'm trying to roll out Booking Hub AI, because I'm like, well, it's a different type of business. It's a massively scalable solution it's a SaaS platform that basically solves the mobile workforce resource problem that Sam had. But maybe ClearSky is just enough. In my head, I'm like, I think if you've got that naivety and that ability to just make it work, you're kind of always tempted by the, moth to the flame kind of thing.
Yeah. Luckiest break.
Founder. So Phil Telfer is my founder. If I didn't have Phil, we wouldn't have got past the first 2 years. And him being just so trustworthy and so strong where I'm weak. Like Phil is ridiculously good at detail. So I call him the detail guy. He calls me the next steps guy. And I'm like, right, okay. But between us, it works. Lucky break, getting him as a business partner. I think if I had someone else that wasn't as trustworthy, it would never have worked, right? Because you have those moments where you are facing a tough uphill battle, and you don't want to be second thinking the person next to you. So yeah, that was probably the luckiest break. Any other lucky breaks? Just lots, just people giving us the chance. I think a lot of people, we didn't have like a track record of delivering, but they gave it a chance anyway because they believed we'd give it our all. And I know it sounds corny, but if they didn't give you a chance, you wouldn't have a business at all.
Yeah.
So it's not like you're putting an advert up in a paper and someone say, "Oh, we'll take one of those." It's how credible are these guys? What have they delivered previously? Oh, they're a new business.
Yeah.
So they've not delivered that many projects previously. Or even when you move into a new area like financial services, like which financial services clients you worked previously? It's like, wow, we did a lot of energy utilities. It's got similar problems, but people giving you a chance and sticking by you, you know. And I think as well with software, it can go wrong. Like it can go wrong. Even with us, you know, we've done it day in, day out. Projects can still be delayed or assumptions can be made that impact timelines. But having clients like we've got now that are partner, it's the partner thing, right? They're not a client, they're a partner. We will be completely honest with them, say, we're behind for these reasons. You know, one, we're sorry, right? We didn't want it to be this. It's my responsibility to make it sure it's not. But we need your help to get over the line and work in different ways. So there's been a few times like that where clients can just turn around and go, "Oh, you didn't deliver it by X date. You're gone." I'd be like, well, but it's never like that. It's like, you're a partner. We understand this problem. It's our business problems you're trying to solve. They're not easy problems. And working together like that to get over a solution. There are a couple of examples that are really good.
And what brings you joy?
In business, it's that when you see the teams are in their flow, they're delivering really quality work. There's been lots of examples in the last year where we've worked on greenfield projects. So greenfield projects are, you're starting with like a blank bit of paper, you're maybe building a brand new platform or mobile app for a company. And taking it from blank paper to that's amazing quality within the time that we've delivered it is outstanding. You know, we delivered that stuff and, you know, maybe in the last year, there's one project we delivered in 9 months. It was a completely re-platform and you're like, oh, 9 months, that sounds long. I've seen companies take years and still not get it right, not go live. And we went live within 9 months, which, you know, we would have liked to have done in 6 months, sure. But, you know, that has been amazing. And so when we talked earlier about functions of business that aren't my like wheelhouse that we had to bring in, hiring in a product design lead that was super, super talented. And she does a great job for ClearSky. She's like her team is like a whole different function that, you know, again, I'm not strong at design, but they really are. And seeing that coming through ClearSky now is just amazing. You step back and go, we delivered this. Yeah. And that's got to be the best feeling in business. On the flip side of it is the control as well, with family side of it. So, you know, I can take time out now. You know, I mentioned I was in kind of Tenerife a couple of weeks ago. I've never been away for a sunny holiday in winter, and you know that was fantastic as well. So spending time with your family is the best thing for me. I think I said something recently in a one-on-one with one of my mentors. I'd rather be a great dad, a great husband, than a great businessman. So that's the order. So it's almost the business is for the family, not the other way around, which is important.
Yeah,
great.
Right way to look at it.
And we ask all our guests finally, just to kind of sum up, you know, what's your philosophy in business?
Never give up. Sounds corny. It sounds like a Rocky thing, but never give up. You'll want to give up. Like you'll get days you go in and you don't want to be there. You'll get days where could it get any more wrong than it's went wrong, right? Just never give up. Keep pushing, pivoting. Sounds like a Friends episode. No, but that's it. It sounds corny. It's and it's something I've tried to relate to my kids as well. Where, you know, say they're struggling with, I don't know, could be struggling with football, could be struggling with reading or something like that. And just to go to them, no one's great at this. It's practicing. It's not giving up. If you give up now, you'll never get great at it. But the people that get great aren't the ones that was easy. I think if you start on something and you're naturally gifted at it, you will be like mid-tier if you don't try. So yeah, never give up.
There's something there as well with what you said right at the start as well, Dan. What was the phrase that you used about kind of looking in at the sunset whilst chewing glass?
Yeah.
So this idea of never giving up, it's like how strong does that vision need to be to kind of almost keep you going and persist through the hard times, I guess? Yeah. So I think that was an Elon Musk kind of quote. But yeah, what was it? Business is like staring off in the distance and chewing on glass at the same time, right? Like, so you've got this vision for how the world could be, how your personal life could be, how the business could be. But you're going to go through a lot of pain to get there. And a lot of people don't see the pain. They'll be like, oh, you're doing great. You're doing great. Like, it's only been 5 years.
I saw your podcast. Yeah. Looks like things are going great. And you're like, yeah.
Yeah, and you're like, and then you try and contrast them like, okay, well, here's the things that I'm worried about that you don't even know, that no one knows. And also the other side of it as well, that So never give up is my main thing, but it isn't for everyone either. I think there's a lot of people in business that they get to a tipping point where it's probably just too much. It's probably like too much for them as a person. It's probably just too much for their life. You see that they never give up, but also understand that it maybe just isn't right for you.
Yeah, great.
Interesting.
Well done for what you have achieved in the 5 years, So it is, it's impressive.
Yeah.
So,
Well, thanks very much.
Loved having you on. We appreciate it. And good luck with everything in the future.
Thanks very much. Yeah, good luck with the podcast, guys. Great talking.
Cheers, Dan.
Cheers.